Whenever you're ready.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the FL Solidity team call. Today is October 3rd, and I'm really excited because we have our integrity partner and our leader, Trey Honeycutt, on with us today. And I really think it's important to kind of hear from different people in the business, people that have been here for a really long time and have went through so many different, peaks and valleys, if you will, and then also hearing from newer folks, right? But today we're going to hear from Trey. Trey's an integrity partner. Hierarchy, which we are a part of, guys, issues like about 4 million a month. So Trey was not big to brag on himself. You never know that if you just talk to Trey on the street, which is one more reason why I love him. But again, somebody who's really just been able to, in the past, from different things I've heard and learned from Trey, being able to put that ego to the side, being able to put that feeling of rejection to the side, being able to put things to the side and focus forward and being a forward thinker. So Trey, I can't thank you enough because we're looking at the one of the boards in the office the other day. And this was like back in the day when you used to do a call, maybe like 2 years back on every Wednesday for recruiting. And Christina and I had written down so many different things and they all said Trey H, Trey H, Trey H. And we were just laughing like, this is like a Trey's board, right? So Trey, really excited to have you on with us today, and I just appreciate you taking the time. Truly, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's good to be on with you guys. I love you guys too. Um, so it's funny. I was in Nashville a couple months ago and with Neil Brown, and we were going through the office, and they had this quote framed, and his wife MJ was standing there, and he stops at the quote and he goes, "I just really love this quote." And MJ thought he was joking. He's like, "Who said this?" And she goes, "Trey said it." And I'm like, "Oh, I guess I did. I did whatever the quote was." But it was really funny. I mean, I'm good at talking in sound bites, so I get some good, I say the same thing over and over. So that's where that comes from doing it for 10 years. If I didn't have some good one-liners, after 10 years, that would be a problem. But one thing I don't say a lot, thinking about it, because Christina was talking about the annual convention, and you were too, Maurice, about how important it is to be there. And I think it's probably the part of the business that people neglect because they just think, well, I'll just go harder. I'll just keep crashing into the wall harder and eventually it'll break. And the truth is, it doesn't work like that. They asked Abraham Lincoln, he had a quote, and he said, if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend 4 hours sharpening my axe and 2 hours chopping the tree. And what most people do is they just start chopping with a dull axe, and the tree never falls over because they never take the time to sharpen it. That's really a big key to this business is just getting in the place where you can sharpen your axe and know that you've really never arrived and that things are changing all the time. And then there's people that are better at it than you are. And it's okay to stop and slow down and listen to the people who are making massive strides in the business. And you guys have always done a really good job of that. That's why, especially Heather. That's if there's a key to Heather's success, other than that is the key. I mean, I was going to say, other than being at every training ever, no matter where it was, I mean, she was great at sharpening her axe, but it wasn't about showing up to learn about the products. It wasn't to show, to figure out how long that critical, how much that critical illness rider would cover percentage wise. No, it was to get better at effectively communicating with people, learning what to say, learning what not to say. A lot of times we close opportunities, we close doors because you don't even know you do it because you say the wrong thing to start out. It's not just what to say. Sometimes it's about what not to say. So you go through and you will create a ton of momentum in this business from your activity, but you got to slow down to speed up. You got to take that activity, take it back to the classroom, sharpen the axe, take away the dull edges, make it sharper, make it crisper, get better at it, and then go back and chop the tree again. So I hope that makes sense. I think it's so none of us would be here if it weren't for that. Like that is the part of the business that people want to neglect the most because the thing you hear people say is like, I don't need a rah. Well, sometimes you actually do, if you're being honest. I've never convinced myself I don't need a rah because I'm probably bipolar. I need a rah just as much. I was doing the dishes this morning at 5 a.m. And I told my wife, I'm like, I am entering the manic phase of my disorder. So I'm up doing dishes. at 5 a.m. Um, but we do need a rah-rah sometimes. Sometimes you just need communities. Sometimes you need to be around like-minded people that are going somewhere. And and you probably have questions. I shouldn't just jump like this, but I was thinking about it. I've been thinking about this call a lot this week. And one of the things that happens, talking to an agent that was in our office yesterday, and this is somebody I have a history with, it's somebody I believe in, it's somebody I would go to war with. And I said to this person, I go, what I'm seeing is like your dream machine is off. Like we got to turn the dream machine back on. The why is so important, but you should visit that why every day. Every day, you should write down in the morning, you should journal and write down why you're doing it, what the benefits are for making the sacrifices. Because more than half of this is just knowing what you have to give up to get there. And there's going to be some sacrifices. You're going to have to give some things up. You may not be able to go to every ball game. You may not be able to be at every dinner. You may not be able to be home at 6 o'clock every night for dinner, you know, and that's okay, because when your dream machine is working properly and you know why you're doing it, and the society's jaded, and I think a lot of it's from Instagram, because we all look at it and think, oh, this person's rich, they have all these material things. The thing that changed my life the most in this business, and there is a specific conversation. There was a specific conversation that took me from not believing in myself to believing in myself. Literally, it was a specific conversation that took me from not getting closer to what it is that I wanted and like making massive strides. And it was this conversation that I had with Sean Mike where he explained to me, he said, look, he goes, people think that I care about money, talking about himself. He goes, I don't care about money. I just want a better life for my family. And he goes, you're like that too. And for so long, I thought that it was the money. But there isn't a material thing that I've ever, like, I don't have a Range Rover on my dream board. I never had that. But what I do have is experiences with my family, being able to give them opportunities that I couldn't give them if I didn't have money. Those things moved me, but I had to get clear about what it was. And I had to get clear about the fact that it was going to take sacrifice. And I had to get clear about the fact that not everybody's going to see it. A challenge that people have, Marisa, in this, and I shouldn't have talked. So I started talking. Oh, this is okay. I got a bunch of what to say.
No, this is great. This is great.
But the challenge that people have, probably more than anything else, is they listen to the opinions of other people who aren't going the same direction. That's why it's so important to plug in and stay close to the fire. You have to stay close to the leading edge of the fire. If you go do this by yourself, you will die a cold, miserable death, because everything out there is telling you it's a bad idea. Like if you looked at empirical evidence, you would say, oh, I shouldn't do this. Like for the first several years, I didn't know what a P&L statement was. I thought it was car insurance. They kept saying P&L. I was like, car insurance. I'm not even licensed for that. I didn't know what profit and loss was. I just knew that I had more access to more money because I was getting daily deposits. That was it. If you looked at my persistency in the beginning, it was terrible. I don't know of a person that was worse at selling insurance that stayed on the books than me in the beginning. I really don't. I had one 4-week stretch where I went $17,000 in the hole with Americo because I had 11 cancellations in a row, and it freaked me out. Like it messed me up for like 2 years, honest to God. And what I did was I recoiled, and I was like afraid because I was like, oh, chargeback bad, chargeback bad. And the truth was, like, I was overselling the crap out of people. Like if they made $3,000 a month, I was selling them $450 a month because it made sense. Like you get all the money back at the end, 25 years, you get all this money back. Like, yeah, that's a great idea. They only made 3,000 a month. It was a bad idea. They should have spent 50. You know, it was much more palatable. But you can make it sound so good, and you're talking to people that want to buy the insurance, they just get a little too excited. So that would happen. And then, they'd make the first payment and they'd be like, hey, I want to cancel. So they'd get their first payment back. And I had like a bunch of these in a row. And then for like 2 years, I wouldn't sell a policy that was like more than $15 a month. Like I was terrified at selling. More than 30 was hard, like for real. And dude, my app count was sick. I had the most app count ever, but I was just terrified at selling premium because I was afraid people were going to cancel. And what I figured out is they still canceled. I just didn't get as big a chargeback, but they still canceled. So sharpening my axe, going to the trainings, I had to learn some skills. I had to learn the skill set of retention. I had to learn the set of building value in the policy and helping them understand what it was going to do and learning to walk away when they weren't going to keep it and learning the skill set of having enough appointments and buying enough leads so that I wasn't hugging Mary's leg, begging her to buy a policy, you know? So, so all these things added up over time and going to these events to tie it all in, that's where I solidified the skill set because I would go from learn knowledge, I would learn what to do, I'd go put it into action, I'd go back to the training I'd learned, I'd put that same training back into action, and over time it evolved into something that was super profitable. The other thing is, I think people don't put enough, um, they don't put enough focus on the right things in the beginning. Um, the way I looked at this business from the very beginning was I was building an insurance agency. That that's when it
Trey,
okay,
not to interject, even when it was just you, right?
okay, now I gotta go back. All right. Let me tell the whole thing. In the beginning, it was a sales gig. Okay. But that was scary. That was just me. And that's where I had the most problems because there were all these people taking money out of my house in the form of bills. And the only person bringing it in was me. And then that's when I realized I'm not here for a sales gig, which there's nothing wrong with a sales gig. I'm a big fan of selling insurance. You should all sell as much of it as you possibly can. But I had to change my mentality to what I was doing was building an agency. And in order to build an agency, the philosophy is sell first. But the other part of the philosophy is recruit to make up the difference. So where I see a lot of people get messed up is they want all these extras in the business, but they pay for those extras with their personal sales. You shouldn't pay for extras in the business with your personal sales. You should pay for extras in the business with overrides. So like the person's selling and all of a sudden they want to get 5 dialers and 100 and, you know, a, a big expensive system for AI and to make phone calls for them or whatever. People come with all kinds of stuff they want to invest money in, right? And it's all driven by their personal sales. Like that's not the platform. The platform for me was sell first, recruit to make up the difference, and use the money from overrides to reinvest into the business. Because I could always sell enough to make a living, but to build an asset, I was taking the money from overrides and I was putting it back into the business. So the form of staff, in the form of office space, in the form of technology, in the form of helping people with leads, in the form of travel, and all the other stuff that I had to do. Um, that served me really well when I started thinking of it like that. Because this is a really hard thing to do by yourself, like for the rest of your life. Like it really is. Because what happens if you get sick? What happens if you get hurt? In 2018, I was in the ER 3 times. And one, I had Bell's palsy. Y'all know what Bell's palsy is? If you know what Bell's palsy is, put a 1 in the chat. Okay, yes. So I had Bell's palsy. And I told Andrew Taylor, and he was like, "Oh my God." He freaked out. And then he told me later, he goes, "I thought you meant cerebral palsy. You can't even get insurance with that." And I was like, "No, it's just Bell's palsy." But but what happened was like half of my face was paralyzed, right? Like it wouldn't move. And like all my wrinkles went away, which was crazy. Because it's like the nerve, like this particular nerve, it causes your face to tense up. So when it doesn't work, it's like it just goes flat. So like on one side, I had 0 wrinkles, but my mouth wouldn't move. I couldn't close my eye. It was weird. Like I would drink out of a straw, and like water would fly out the other side of my mouth. And I was feeling really bad for myself, but I still had to run appointments. So I got an eye patch and I ran appointments like the next day. The first person that I showed up to was this cosmetic dentist. And I went in and I told him what happened. And he goes, "Oh man," he goes, "I see people with Bell's palsy like their teeth rot because the nerve doesn't function and I like have to pull their teeth." He's like, "You might have a hard road." Now, in like 3 weeks, I was good. I was like 99% normal. And I was telling this lady at this appointment about the whole story. And I'm going, "Yeah, but it's back to normal now." And she's looking at my face and she goes, "Oh no, it's not. It's bad. It's really bad on." And then she pointed to like the other side of my face. So like the normal side of my face. And she's like, "This side is terrible. Like there's something not right." And I'm thinking, "God, she just pointed to my normal face." Anyway, I don't know why I told you all that story, but it's one of the funniest moments of my life. And I
That's
don't even think she
hilarious.
thought.
Not
So
that you were in the hospital for it, but that's hilarious that she really did that. But I'm like, hey, no, your face is great if you ask me, Trey. But I think it's a huge point that you just made. Like one of the first things you led with too was like the dream machine being off, right?
right.
Sometimes when I feel like, like I wanna feel bad for myself in a moment. Like I'm not gonna sit here and tell everybody on the call that I've never had a feel bad for me party, but I'm trying to limit those parties, right? Like all the time, trying to eliminate those parties. But one thing I do always go back to is that childlike faith, right? I wish sometimes I had more children around me because every time I do have interaction with the child, what I realize, Trey, is they're usually like, you tell them they can't do something or it's not safe or whatever it might be. And their question is always, why? Why can't I? Right. And I think as we get older, we start building validation and beliefs about ourselves of this is why I can't, or this is why I can, right? But if we can go bring ourselves back to that childlike faith of like, why can't I, right? It's like, guys, we got 5-year-olds saying, why can't I? Like, there's 15-year-olds that would love to do this and they would have a blast on the phone doing it. It's like, because they have that faith of it's going to work out. Like, this is the system I follow. I'm going to do it. When that dream machine turns off, you can bet your life that like mentally you're gonna start having challenges. So there's things we got to do, just like Trey was talking about, to make sure that that machine essentially stays on, like that we have that why in front of us. So I think that it's huge, just like Trey was talking about, like these are the rewards and these are the sacrifices that are going to be made. And Trey, like, is it fair to say like that's kind of an ongoing thing, like through the business and just through life?
Yeah, it totally is. And the thing that's going to contribute more to that than anything else is the people you associate with, the things you listen to, and the books you read. Um, you can tip the scales in your favor, but it has to be an intentional thing. Um, Earl Nightingale years ago, Earl Nightingale is the father of the self-development industry. And he has at the time, it was the first gold selling recording of all time. And it was an audio called The Strangest Secret. And I think The Secret, y'all have heard of The Secret, they kind of ripped off what Earl said. Earl said it in a much less new agey way. Um, but that's 100% what he was talking about, was how that if you can learn how to harness your mind and your attitude, you can accomplish anything because what you focus on grows. Like you can't focus on getting financially free when you're sitting there worried about your bills. Like my friend Josh, I have this friend. He's an interesting guy. Um, I probably have learned like if I were to say I had a mentor, um, there's a couple people that would make that list, but Josh is definitely one of them. Josh is 5'3". Um, he could stand in a swimming pool and jump out of the shallow end, which is nuts. I call him Mighty Mouse. He's probably the strongest human specimen I've ever met in a small body, right? And when he was young, he had went to prison for weapons and drug charges. And he got out, he worked in a warehouse, and became a business owner, and eventually became really wealthy and really honest. I mean, there was a time, like, he probably didn't know this, but there was a time where, there was only a few people on the planet that I probably really trusted as much as this dude, right? And that's what he talked about. He always talked about tipping the scales. He goes, look, you always have all this stuff in your background, all this baggage, and what you got to learn to do is just tip the scales in your favor. And you do that by intentionally feeding yourself good information, focusing on focusing on what's working, not what's not working. What you focus on grows. Like when I say you can't, get ahead and worry about all your bills. There was a time where I would laugh at it, but he had all these late bills, like he just like threw them away. You know, people say, "Well, I can't do that. I got to pay my bills. That's irresponsible." It's hard to it's hard to be double minded. It's either going to work or it's not going to work. You can't focus on all the things that are bad and focus on things that are good at the same time. That's what I'm trying to say. And this business is to a degree, is a big part of that. Like people spend way too much time focusing on what's not working instead of focusing on what is working. Um, they spend way too much time. There's a skill set you have to develop, and every person on this call should make it a point to try to develop the skill set. But you got to get good at asking for help without complaining, because the people you're asking for help from, they're making a living selling insurance too. So if you complain all the time, they'll avoid you like the plague. And it's not because they're mean, it's because they got to protect their brain. One of the people, Heather, is a great example. Heather and Afro, they're great examples of asking for help without complaining. Another skill set you need to develop is becoming an easy person to work with. I've seen so many people, um, I've seen so many people kind of blow their opportunity because they want to like nitpick every wrong thing that ever happens and throw a fit over everything and just kind of be toxic and then wonder why they don't get the help that they want. Like you can't do that. Like my whole deal in the beginning was like, I'm really fortunate to be around Andrew Taylor. I'm really grateful for the fact that he invests time and effort and energy into me. I'm not going to bring all my problems to him, suck my thumb and talk about how bad it is, because I don't want to take that for granted. And sure enough, even when I wasn't the number one salesperson, because I had a good attitude and I was easy to work with on purpose, I was always welcome. You know, I don't know who needs to hear that, but that's a big part of it. If people aren't getting the results that they want, the first place you got to look at really is in the mirror. People are so quick to blame. I had this guy the other day. He's like, well, I have this and I just want help with this, 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 and this. Like he had this list of demands. And I was like, I hear you, but you've been here a year. You've never really done anything. You never answer the phone when I call you, but now all of a sudden it's an emergency because you want. Like, don't be that person. There's two types of people. There's givers and there's takers. And the person that succeeds really well in this business is the giver. It's the person that's not keeping score. It's the person that shows up early, goes home late, is willing to help everybody, isn't looking for a handout at all, isn't looking for a um don't be entitled. That's perfect. Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. I should have just said that at the beginning, and I could have, done a whole nother 30 minutes of other stuff. Don't be entitled. Thank you.
No, but it's really true though. And Trey, even when you kind of sit back, like no matter what predicament you're in with a group of agents, and whether that's at an event, that's on dial team, that's on, virtual office, that's on this call right now, that there's going to be people that, like you said, or they want you on demand, but you got to get in touch with them. They don't answer. So the givers versus the takers, guys, I think that's really important that we're just all mindful of. And I love how you said becoming an easy person to work with. Trey, like when I was younger in this business, like the first person that had to deal with me, like, God bless them, because like I just had I had the list of questions, right? Before I was even doing anything. And it's like, let's just get moving, right? Let's get moving. Let's become an easy person to work with. let's work with the information that was given to me, go through it thoroughly, and slow down so I can speed up, versus blame my mentor or blame the system or blame the script or blame the leads or blame your kid because your kid had to get picked up from school. Whatever the situation is, right? It's like, don't be that person in the room that everybody's avoiding like the plague. And if you find yourself in that scenario, just start, like, have a conversation with yourself, right? Like, Trey, I've had to do that before. Like, okay, everyone's being a little bit weird, right? Well, okay, well, think about what you've been saying. Think about the conversations you've been having. Think about the feedback you have or haven't been given. And I think that if we can take that step back, guys, it's a huge eye opener for us and just for self-awareness purposes. It's like, because I can promise you guys, if you're on here, you're gonna work with an agent. Someone's gonna work with you one day, even if they seek you out and you're not seeking them out. Be that person that people want to work with. And guys, it's not going to be easy every day. But Trey, is your job easy every single day? Like, do you wake up and you're like, this is so easy?
No.
Right? Like,
it's
so,
worth it, but it's not
worth
easy.
it. It's worth it, but it's not easy. So guys, it's like, these are like, Trey, I'm really happy you're taking the time to go through these things, like getting help without complaining, because guys, all of this just coincides with, like, let's do the work, let's get the feedback, let's apply the feedback, and let's repeat. And let's focus on the positive things and not the negative. And just like you were talking about too, Trey, like Earl Nightingale, how like kind of The Secret, really did rip him off a lot. And he does a much more elegant presentation of it. But guys, what we focus on grows. Like, if we could all reprogram our brains and be like, okay, like, I'm going to just focus only on the good things for the next 48 hours. You're going to realize in 72 hours, like when you start focusing on the bad, that like you felt a heck of a lot better. And even if you can just feel better, like, isn't that a good thing? Right? Like, if I can feel good throughout my day, like, that's great, because the results are going to come as long as I'm doing the right thing. So Trey, this is great, because it really is. I love how you shared about Mighty Mouse. By the way, it took me a second to understand him jumping out of the shallow end of the pool, like, to understand, comprehend that. Like, that's wild, by the way. So, like, Mighty Mouse for sure. But
it is pretty remarkable.
But tipping the scales in our favor, guys, there are some things we are able to do to tip the scales in our favor. And that does not at all include a list of our problems. It includes a list of, like, what can we intentionally do to help ourselves? What can we intentionally do to help our mentor? What can we intentionally do to help the team? What can we intentionally do to help the guy down the street? Truly, because when we start thinking that thought process, like, you move different, and it's delightful. So I would empower everyone on this call, like, hey, if you have a hard time with positive thinking, or it's like, we've all been there, we all have self-doubt, but like, if you can just focus on the positive things, try to do that for a couple of hours, and you're going to realize, like, again, Trey, like Trey said, the people you talk to. So if you're around negative people, you got to figure that out. The books you read and the information that you listen to. So, like, don't listen to bad things. Like, I don't watch the news because I don't want that running through my head and repeating through my head unless I really have to watch it, right? Like, guys, COVID broke out and I was like, no, it didn't. I was literally sitting there. I was like, it's like, we can leave the house. You're crazy. Like, I don't watch certain things because I know how I personally react to them, right? So guys, know yourself, but also know how you react to different situations. And I think that we're all a work in progress, no matter if you're on this call and you're 18 or you're 65, like, we're always a work in progress, and we can always be better, so to say, as where we're trying to go, but we can also really get derailed at times too. So, Trey, this has been really helpful. Thank you.
I'm happy to help. What else did you want me to talk about?
I was going to say, so you talked a little bit about it in the beginning, right? Like, I know that when I came into the insurance industry, first of all, I didn't know anything, but once I did, I knew I didn't want to do it by myself, right? I knew I eventually wanted to grow a team, but at that time I did have some self-doubts. Now, at that same time, I remember my mentor. Now, Trey, this is at my practice company, okay? So they were pushing me to, like, recruit like my whole high school if that was possible, right? But anyways, with that being said, really what I realized coming in was, my manager sat me down and he was like, you don't have to build a team. You can just produce. You don't have to do that. But you said you want to build the team. So like, what's making you not want it? And I said, like, I don't think I'm good. I haven't sold any policies. A lot of you guys know my story. My first month in the industry, I sold no insurance. Now I'm happy to say that never happened again. But sitting down with him and realizing, he was like, what if you got hurt? Like, don't you live by yourself? What if, at that time I did, what if you got hurt and you couldn't work? I was like, I don't know. And he's like, okay, these are like the same things we ask people essentially when they should pass on, but we're talking about like while you're still experiencing your life. It's like he wasn't trying to push me, he was just trying to help me understand you can be self-employed in a quadrant, and that's awesome. Like you can do sales. Sales is great, but you can also build something off of that and help other people while you're doing it. And Trey, you've done an amazing job of that. I mean, your numbers and your team speak volumes, for that. So talk to us a little bit about when you started recruiting and why.
Well, I didn't really start recruiting until a couple years in. And the reason why is because I had a lot of trust issues. I didn't really believe any of this. You know, Here I was, I went out there, I started selling. I had a bunch of chargebacks in the beginning. I didn't think anybody actually kept it. Um, you know, I had to overcome a lot of past baggage to really believe that this was something that I wanted to share with people or it was even going to last. You know, there's a story about this kid that had a mentor. It was a wise teacher, and he would come to the wise teacher once a month, and he would tell him all his dreams and goals. And the wise teacher said, "Well, that all sounds great, but when you're 30, everything's going to change." And then he would come back, and he would tell him about all his dreams and goals. And he would tell him about all the people that would say it wasn't possible. And he goes, "Good for you. Keep your head up. Because one day when you're 30, all that's going to change." And then he was on the eve of his 30th birthday. I'm probably messing the story up. I was trying to make it like, a really good story, but
Oh, it's still
but
really good.
but he's 29, you know. He shows up and he's telling him all the stuff he wants to accomplish in his life. And he goes, "But this person said this, and this person said that, and this person said this, and you know, I don't really know if I can do it." And he said, "Well, the problem was when you turn 30, you're gonna believe him," meaning all the people that said he couldn't do it. So that's what happens is we all show up with baggage from our past. I don't know if we all do, but I did, of all the things that we messed up and failed at, and then we want to carry that like into this. And it took me a couple years of selling, making money, getting ahead, believing in it, being around people that were successful for me to say, yeah, this is something I should actually share with people. And it will lighten the load if I'm able to do that. And so in the beginning, I really didn't focus that much on recruiting. It was just about me and it was a sales gig. But what changed was I got around people that had a business, they had staff, they had overrides, they had time freedom, they were normal, they were accepting of me, they weren't weird. And it made me believe that you can do this the right way by people, treat people right, not take from anyone, and build a successful business you can be proud of, that you can put your head on the pillow at night and not be ashamed. Like this isn't something where you get people. Like I was never trying to get somebody, you know? I was just trying to give them a chance. And the goal of recruiting for me was just education and awareness. I just wanted people to know it was there because so many people, if they really knew what this business could do, like people are praying every night for a way to like not be behind on their bills, for a way to actually pay their rent on the first, you know, for a way to not pay Peter, not rob Peter to pay Paul. People are so resourceful, they're so good at that. But the stress of having to do that year in, week in, month out, year in, year out, it's exhausting and people are worn out. And if they just had a chance, um, they can change everything. And once I realized that I was around people that were having massive success at this, that they were sharing it with people who were also making a living selling and they were happy, then I was like, I have an obligation to share it with folks. And that's really where it started the recruiting part for me because when it stopped being all about me and it started being about the fact that I have a gift that I can give people, then everything really did change. And it was selfish of me to just keep it to myself. And back then it was common to keep it to yourself because you'd think, well, there's only so many leads here. You know, like there's never been a better time to recruit than now because people, y'all do it on the phone. You can just get licensed in freaking Wisconsin. So there, like it's not like, you know, being in Coachella Valley. You know, there's only so many leads in Riverside County. It's not like that anymore. Now it's like, hey, we could both work here, but we could sell in Colorado, and and it gives you guys so much more opportunity we had before. The other thing is the access that we have now to top producers and their daily work methodology, their daily method of operation. Like because of these Zoom rooms and the fact that you can get on live dials with people and you can see Heather work and you can see her make sales and you understand what her schedule's like and she'll talk to you about her lead flow and you hear what she says. Like that type of access, we never had that before. So there's very few things that you can get stuck on and not get ready, available answers to your questions. Um, the other part of that though is there's always a tendency to overcomplicate it and think you're not ready. And sometimes too much information will really slow you down. So you just got to be cognizant of the fact of like, you don't have to know everything Heather knows before you start. Just because you got like, you set an appointment and they didn't show up, they probably wouldn't have shown up for anybody, you know? But what happens is people like, they get like 5 no-shows on the phone, which is easy to no-show you. And then they start second guessing every single thing about how they firm up appointments and well, wonder what Heather says. And then they want to go like diagnose and like fix all these. The problem is you're not talking to enough people about insurance.
Yeah.
We're taking small samples and trying to make permanent decisions off small data sets. Like what you have to do is make up your mind to follow a certain direction for 90 days. Don't lift your head up for 90 days. Just actually set out, keep the schedule, and see where you are 90 days from now. And now you can tweak and adjust, and you'll have a great idea of what it is that you actually need to fix. But what happens a lot, because the information is so readily available and the mentorship is so close by, is that you get a couple hours in and then you're revamping the whole thing. So you never get any traction. So it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing that, yes, we can hear Marisa sell all day, every day, but it's also a curse because we start second guessing the basics and the foundation. So if you're new, your goal should be, what are the fundamentals? I'm going to put my head down. I'm not going to keep score. I'm going to get through the first 100 presentations on the phone. What is that? That's giving the price to someone and having them make a decision based on what you told them. And even if that's premature, because you're going to do that a lot, you're going to skip the whole presentation and give a price. That counts. That's one of the 100. You're going to learn not to do that. You're going to learn when you get off track. What it usually is happening is you're shortcutting because you're letting somebody else's time expectation affect you. So you got to learn how to take control of conversations and slow them down. That's a big part of it. You know, when people want to skip over the doctor-patient relationship matters a ton in sales. Like you're the doctor, they're the patient. Like I sat in an urgent care with my kids trying to get a football physical for 3 hours. And we were the only people there. What the heck? It was unbelievable. Like I protested, I stood up, I was like, I gotta go to work. They didn't move any faster. And in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, well, I'd have to go sit 3 hours somewhere else. And so I sat there until the doctor woke up from her nap and pulled us back in the back and signed the stupid form. That's doctor-patient relationship. So
That's huge. So you just hit on so many different things. So first though, getting around people who are seeing like success in this business. Like Trey said, he was around people who were doing it, right? It's like you might now, because everything's virtually, and you might be like, oh, well, I'm not around anyone. Guys, just like Trey saying, we've never been closer to people. We just have to we just need to talk to them, right? Now, sometimes, you might see somebody hop on, you might see Trey hop on Zoom, and you might be like, Trey's way too important to talk to me for 1 minute, so I'm not going to ask Trey any questions. It's like, okay, if Trey's on the Zoom, he's on there because he's just like all of us, and he's just trying to like do the best he can and help people, right? But guys, going back to it, stop being all about me. I think that that's huge. When you stop making everything about, even just in the sale, never mind recruiting real quick, even in the sale, you stop making it all about you and you just hear what the person's saying. Usually we can also help ourselves, and are we spinning our wheels and wasting our time, right? But there's a lot of opportunity here. And guys, the access on Zoom is crazy. It's like, if there's a question, like when someone texts me now, I'm like, I love you guys. Like, just like unmute on Zoom or be like, hey, Marisa, can we go to break over? I'm like, guys, like we're all on there all together. So it's like that's the point of it. But at the same time, 90-day rule, Trey, that's what kept me in this industry, right? Like my first 2 years in, 90 days, everyone used to say 90 days, 90 days. And I would be like, yeah, like whatever. I was like 20. I was like, who cares, right? But then it's like, it comes to a point you need to care or you need to get out, right? Like, so I had this saying that was be all in or get the F out. And that was my saying. That's what I would say to myself. Okay. Doesn't mean it's right for you, but it helped me understand, do the 90-day cycle or just don't do it at all. Because if you're not willing to do something for 90 days, can you complain about it? Can you say you were dedicated? Can you say you really tried? Can you say you exhausted your resources? No. So like for me, Trey, guys, if we could all get off of here and say, we're going to change ABC that needs to be changed for 90 days and see what happens. Because just like Trey's saying, sometimes we have so much information, right? We might hear Heather close, and Heather's closing question might be, now taking a look at these, you want to look at something lower in between, you feel comfortable applying for one of these. And you might have said on yours, well, most veterans go with that option B, but what option looks best for you? Okay. Now, if that's your closing question, you don't change it every time you talk to somebody, guys, because then we don't know if it's working. So when we're saying 90 days of fundamentals, no score, right? Don't keep score of other people. It does not matter how many sales Wilson's making. It doesn't matter. You're not, unless you're Wilson, right? Then it matters. Like Wilson, that should matter to you. But you shouldn't be keeping score of how many sales Andrew's making in comparison. The comparison complex will mess you up more than anything in this business if you allow it to. But 90 days of fundamentals, meaning just the basic things, not changing them, not changing your objections, unless, again, it needs to be changed. Doing something consistently for 90 days is going to show you exactly what is wrong. It's going to show you my introduction is terrible. It's going to show you my closing question could be better. It's going to show you I don't set up the appointment properly, and that's why I don't collect bank and social security number. It's going to show you all of these things. Now, you might say, well, I have to do 90 days of that to figure it out. No, because within that 90 days, you by yourself and your own independence are going to find ways over time. I would say you shouldn't be making any changes in the first 45 to overcome those things a bit better in the last 45 of that 90 days. And by the time you're at the end of it, you're going to feel one of two things. You're going to feel like, damn, this is like, I got this down. Or you're going to feel like I didn't follow the 90 days. Because I can tell you guys, like, I've never done something. And if you guys have done something for 90 days and like you didn't get any data, see a result, or weren't able to change something, that's kind of weird. And I'm not being mean. But it's like, no matter what it is, like if you wanted to fix your handwriting in 90 days, like you could do it. You just have to make sure you're sticking to the fundamentals. You're not keeping score of someone else's handwriting, and that you're actually doing it, right? We can talk all day about how we're gonna call people, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. It doesn't matter. You need to get in front of 100 people. We used to say in the home, you have to get in your first 100 homes, and then you're like a master of the process to a point. Obviously, we all still got questions. But guys, we're on the phone with people, right? It's easy to like try to push, change the script because of the way the person answered the phone. Stick to what you're supposed to do. Because I can tell you anytime, Trey, that I've ever got like that, you ever get like, you call someone out and you're like, and I'm like, hey, Trey, I'm calling about your insurance. And you're like, yeah, I want 25,000. And then you skip it. And now as the agent, I skip everything. Because I'm like, Trey's buying, he wants 25 grand. I'm like, all right, Trey, this is how much it's going to cost. And he's like, all right, that's cool. Then I'm like, Trey, what's your social? He's like, I'm not giving that out.
Yep.
Guys, we got to slow down and speed up, right? Trey, that like you've been there? Like, guys, if you've ever been
Yes.
there and you're on this call, raise your hand. Like, we've all been
Yeah.
there. I've seen most of y'all there too. Love you guys. But my point is we got to kill, you got to figure it out. 90 days, put your head down, stay focused. It will change your life or it won't, but you'll know where you're at. Like you'll be able to keep your own score. And that's what's amazing. So sorry I cut you off, Trey, but I had to.
And then the last thing I'll say is just make a habit of setting goals that you can actually accomplish. Like set the goals based on like activity and many little small wins. Like there was an agent here the other day that was having a hard time getting on the phone. And I think they called 17 leads in like 4 hours. And I was like, no, you need to like, you got to speed it up so you don't think about it. So you should make a goal to like make 50 phone calls and 50 texts in 45 minutes. Like just make that your goal. Like make it a goal to talk to 7 people in the next half hour. Like if you do that, that's a win. Like you don't have to set the goal to be on Zoom for 10 hours and dial 10 hours straight. It's like, hey, in the next, I have 30 leads. I'm going to connect with 6 of these people in the next 15 minutes. So I'm going to dial feverishly to get somebody on the phone. And then that's how we set the goals for the activity. And then learn how to make it fun. Like learn how to have fun doing this. We take it all so serious. Like I kind of ham it up. I just try to have fun. For me, dialing, and then this is y'all are recording this, and I don't want to give the wrong message, but my mentality was I was borderline prank calling, and that sound I don't know how to put it any other way, but I didn't take it so serious. And trust me, I was broke buying leads, overdrawing my bank account with no credit card. Like I needed the money, but I learned how to not take it so serious. So I just laughed off when somebody hung up or they didn't like what I said or I said the wrong thing or reacted the wrong way. I learned how to laugh it off, forget about it, and move on. 2 things you got to have is a good sense of humor and a bad memory. You need to laugh it off and forget about it.
Absolutely. And I think that that's great advice kind of to wrap up with, guys. Just like Trey said, activity-based goals are going to be a lot more realistic and they're going to actually help you get where you need to go. So let's all make an activity-based goal of what we want to do, whether that's today, that's tomorrow, or that's moving forward. Talk to X people. I think that that's huge, right? It's all about how many people can we get in front of and learn how to make it fun. I think that that's huge too. If you can't laugh off rejection, you got to. If not, you're going to take this business way too seriously and you're going to end up wanting to pull your hair out. It doesn't have to be that serious. And I understand what you're saying, Trey, about the borderline prank phone call. And you're just saying you take it lightly. You don't really kind of care what they have to say. You're trying to call them to help them out. If you can, awesome. If you can't, hey, let's get a solid laugh, right? Because usually we get one of those here and there. But keep it fun, guys, right? So I think that that's huge. So Trey, I can't say I appreciate your time more than I really, really, really do. Thanks for being on with us. I know that you don't have a lot of time, so thank you. And just thanks for pouring into the team all the time. We appreciate you. You're amazing.
Happy to be on with you guys. I'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks. Bye.